Alright, the Creations World in 2020. This was a much bigger year compared to 2019, since, of course, we had all 12 months of the year with this world this time, because the world started in August of 2019. With now having the whole year to do events in this world, there were a whole lot more of them. So, this should be a bit longer than the previous one. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The first Creations World event of 2020 was the Souls Lab 5th Anniversary Celebration. It started on January 15th, and I think it was originally going to last only a few days. Right. The event was originally from January 15th through the 22nd. However, it actually stayed for an entire month, ending on February 15th, respectively. And that was by complete accident, obviously. The event went all around the Souls Lab series to celebrate its 5th anniversary. And oh boy, this was a very fun celebration, consisting of, well, mainly cakes, as we can clearly see right here. Yeah, it was mainly cakes for this celebration. But hey, it's better we have a ton of cakes here than no decorations at all, right? Not to mention, this was over a year before we got the candles in the game, so I couldn't really do much, because those were added in 2021, and this was in 2020. But yep, it literally went all over the entirety of the lab office, like every single lab office that we had here, and even the UFO. Nice, right? Well, that practically wraps it all up right there. On to the next event. The next event to occur in the Creations World in 2020 was the Valentine's Day event. It started on February 14th, and well, had an original end date of February 18th. However, it ended over 2.5 weeks later on March 5th by complete accident. Oh, yeah, hi. I'm actually here on the world just to ensure that I get these lengths correct. So, don't mind me. As you would expect, the entire world was decorated for Valentine's Day, and this being the first one, also being the smallest. There were no free items in this party, surprisingly. Yeah, this probably had to be, I think, the smallest Valentine's Day party. Now, granted, I could understand, considering we were still within the first 6 months of the world, although we were actually about to hit half a year at the time. But regardless, sorry about that. I bet though, party was beautiful. There were hearts all across the world to celebrate Valentine's Day. You can tell the world was pretty small during this time, considering most of the aspects weren't even here yet. So, that's something. And yes, we even had the purple hearts, around over a year before they were implemented into Lego's Island. Yeah, honestly, that was a kind of a surprise. I'll admit, this was one of the cool Valentine's Day parties we've done. Of course, I think I've done, better in later years, but this was a nice first one for the Creations World. It is understandable why it was a bit small, of course, considering we were still, starting out this world. It wasn't even half a year old yet at the time, aka 6 months. So, it was as expected to keep things a bit small. But you could tell the events were getting bigger, and this was definitely just the beginning of that. Let's move on. Next up is the St. Patrick's Day Party of 2020. It started on March 17th, and originally had an end date of March 22nd, but it actually ended on April 15th due to me not being active in the world at the time. Like the Valentine's Day party, the Creations World was decorated in all in green. We had some gold, alongside some emerald as well, similar to Lego's Island. But yeah, as you would expect, it's all decorated in green. Alongside some yellow too, to represent the gold fact. Point is, like the Valentine's Day party, this was probably the smallest one we have done as of yet, because of course in later years they would become even bigger. But for the first one here in the Creations World, I think it did a pretty good job here. If you hadn't managed to notice, practically every single event we've done so far has practically had the entirety of the world decorated. I think outside of the Souls Lab series. I think outside of that, the entire world was decorated, and I think again that goes for all of these events so far. And I mean ever since the world just started in general, I meant. Well, it was becoming pretty clear because, yeah, you can clearly tell right here because, of course, the windows and everything. Yeah, you could tell I wasn't messing around here. Oh boy, we sure got to that basement around 10 months later. This was a very cool St. Patrick's Day party. Obviously not the best, but it was a nice first one for the Creations World. And, of course, let's move on. Oh yeah, this village design also looked pretty awesome as well. So, with all that being said, And as I just said, let's move on. Ooh, now this had to be my personal favorite right here. Okay, really though, let's actually move on. This next party is a combination of 3. April Fool's Day, Easter, and Earth Day for 2020. Since the St. Patrick's Day party went on way longer than it should have, I had to combine all 3 parties into one, despite most of these holidays already being passed by the time the event went live. April Fool's Day and Easter respectively. Earth Day, we still had about a week to go until that occurred when it went live. So, this party, it started on April 15th and originally had an end date of the 29th. However, it ended on April 30th because I forgot to take it down. So, with all that being said, as follows. For Easter, we had a ton of pastel decorations all over, and yes, we did have an Easter egg hunt for anyone curious. And for April Fool's Day, just a bunch of random holes that you probably would have never saw coming. And for Earth Day, we had a ton of gardens, as we could clearly see here. Oh yeah, those gardens were everywhere. Literally, look at this. They were freaking everywhere. Oh yeah, and yes, there's your proof that we did actually have an Easter egg hunt. You're welcome. There were 8 eggs hidden around the Creations World. At least I think there were 8. And we could get the Easter banner as a reward for complete... Oh, whoa. Make that 10. Never mind. Miscounts. Either way, we searched all around the Creations World to find them. And that was very fun. Oh yeah, not to mention there were anvils everywhere for April Fool's Day. And it was very cool. And a lot of things also went missing, of course, as a joke for April Fool's Day. There were holes everywhere. And overall, this event was just very fun in general. There was no recycle hunt for Earth Day. That would be done a few years later in 2023. You're welcome. But overall, this was a very nice event to just combine all 3 after missing out on 2 of them. And this was the list of items you could get for each holiday, despite 2 of them are, again, already passing by the time the event went live. Either way, it was a very fun event to put together. And with all that being said, let's move on. The next event took place 2 months later. Yeah, there was no event in May. But that would become a reoccurring thing across, the Creations World in later years. Well, I guess if you don't count, of course. May 2023. And I think also May of 2021 as well. But point is, this next one was the summer party of 2020. It started on June 25th and ended August 21st. Now, this is actually the first event of the entire year to have its length actually be the way it was supposed to be. That's right. This was the first event that actually ended the day it was supposed to. Finally! I know, it took all the way until almost the second half of the year for that to finally happen. Oh boy. Speaking of which, this event introduced a ton of present-day permanent changes that you still see in the Creations World to this very day. One of them includes the treehouse. You know how we have the soul torches? Well, funny enough, they were introduced to the treehouse and became permanent additions when this party went live. If you were curious when they were implemented to this world, they were implemented during this party and stayed after, as I really, really love them. And I still do to this very day because my favorite color, as if you don't know, is blue. So this made total sense. With all that being said, the Creations World was decorated in a summer theme. And well, the village clearly explains that. The village literally was all decked out for this. Oh yeah, we went nuts. The palm trees had the soul torches due to the fact that they were recently added during this, as Minecraft 1.16 literally came out 2 days before this party went live, which, if you're curious, started June 25th. But we actually did go into midnight, which was kind of funny. But also kind of annoying, too. Either way, this was a very nice way to introduce summer to the Creations World. And also, it was one of the last events before we hit a year of this world, ironically. So, that was something. Actually, it was the last event before hitting an entire year of the world. Speaking of which, the 1-year anniversary of Legomaster627's creations. This party had an original length of August 21st through the 24th. However, it actually ended on the 31st because I forgot to take it down. Speaking of which, all anniversary parties started on its anniversary day, much like they did for Lego's Island as well. So yep, it started August 21st and ended on the 31st, with an original end date of August 24th as previously stated. As you would expect, the world was decorated for its first anniversary in blue and white, light blue and white to be specific. This party obviously celebrated the 1 year anniversary of this world, and was a very awesome celebration. And it's kind of funny because I am literally recording this Saturday Stories literally just 5 days after hitting the 4th anniversary. So, perfect timing! Of course, there was a yearbook telling us what happened in the first year. And this has become a tradition since. Alongside, of course, the lab and Lego's Island and all that stuff. It would be later added to the library not long after this. But boy, there were cakes everywhere, much like the Zola's Lab 5th anniversary celebration. And, sorry about that. This was a very, very fun party. It was a very, very nice way to celebrate 1 year of this world. And of course, now that we've hit a year, let's see what happens next. Oh, and here's a better view of the party. Since the first anniversary party video actually had to be filmed on my phone because my internet was down at the time. Considering we were doing stuff at the time. So this was the party via on my PC, legitimately. So, just if you were curious. Next up, the Celebration of Fall 2020. It started on September 21st and originally had an end date of September 28th. However, due to the ongoing Operation Lego's Island 2020 remaster at the time, it was extended by 1 week. Because, ironically speaking, because of Operation Lego's Island 2020 remastered, there was no episode on the 28th of September, the day it was meant to go down. So I extended it by 1 week to make up for it, ending on October 5th, respectively. That was the first time I had to properly extend an event. Yep, this was the first event that actually had to get an extension because of something. That being, again, Operation Lego's Island 2020 Remastered, which was ongoing during this party, at least starting the 24th. To the actual event, though, the world was decorated in fall decorations, which was very, very, very cool. And, well, as you would expect, and I mean like in legitimate seriousness, as you would expect, there were pumpkin and hay all over the place with a ton of fall colors as well. While it may or may not have been as decked out as the first anniversary party, I think we did a pretty good job here. Of course, later Celebration of Falls would of course beat this record, but for the first one, this was very cool. And this event has been coming back every year since, starting a bit earlier than the previous ones, with this one being the latest one. But ironically speaking, 2023's is actually going to beat that record starting on September 25th, 4 days after this. Impressive, right? So as of right now, until that goes live, this is the latest Celebration of Fall to begin. With all that being said, this was a very cool way to introduce the Celebration of Fall. It really was. No, literally, you can clearly see we went all out with this. Can't you blame me? Oh no, there were pumpkins everywhere, as you can see. Ironically speaking, though, I think some of these actually stayed after the event because of its extension, which later led into the Halloween party. Yup, they did indeed stay for the Halloween party because of its extension. Unlike the Celebration of Fall, though, this party actually ended the day it was supposed to. Speaking of which, it started on October 5th and ended on November 2nd. Now, the Halloween event was meant to start on October 5th anyway. But yep, it ended on November 2nd, and that was the day it was meant to. Nice, right? This should be probably the last time that an event ended later than usual. But this was the first one in around since the Sour Party that ended on the day it was supposed to. With this being the second Halloween party, it was a lot bigger than the first one, as obviously it had been over a year since the first one, And of course, the world had gotten a lot bigger. This also was ironically held around exactly a year since we started doing events. No, literally, this was literally around the time that we hit the 1 year anniversary of doing Creations World events. So this was pretty cool. Of course, all of the rooms were custom. And that was very cool. But yeah, you could tell this was a whole lot bigger than the first one that occurred 1 year prior in 2019. And obviously that's because the world got a whole lot bigger. And honestly, yeah, 100%, this was way better than the first one. And I can wholeheartedly agree. This was so much better. And I truly loved it. You could tell there was a lot more put into this. And, well, the windows were green. And by the way, the cruise ship originally had a feature where you could travel to the other worlds that had Halloween parties at the time. Unfortunately, this feature was never utilized or ever used in general, and has never actually ever been used ever. Maybe this year might finally be the year. Anyway, with that being said, this also, for the second time in a row, had the event go for almost a month long. Although 2019's did go for a whole month, but this kind of started the little tradition of them going for practically an entire month or just 4 weeks in general. Thankfully, in 2023, this is no longer the case. I did appreciate them going for that long, but it was getting a bit boring after a while. Regardless, yeah, 100% way better than the first one. And that's genuinely all I gotta say. You could tell some of these decorations were kind of left up from the celebration of fall, because these literally started and ended the same day. Like, this literally started the day the celebration of fall ended. So some decorations were actually in the same spots as the celebration of fall, if it wasn't already obvious, if you watch them back to back. Which, if you do end up watching them back to back, you'll probably notice. And again, that's because this literally started the day that ended. So it kind of made a little bit of sense. And actually, there is your proof that this was actually not a joke. Because this literally started the day that ended. Anyway, I'll start repeating myself now. And regardless, very fun Halloween party. Way better than the first one. And with that said, let's move on to the last event of the year. That's right, we skipped November entirely. Actually, for the first few years of the Creations World, we actually always skipped November. And I guess we didn't feel like doing anything. The Christmas event. It started on November 30th and ended on January 4th. Like the Halloween party, this was way bigger and way better than the first one in 2019. Speaking of which, this would be the first one out of 2 to go for over a month, as the next one in 2021 would follow a similar pattern. Just 1 day earlier. But we'll talk about 2021's in the near future. For now, this was way better. It had a very similar idea to both the Legos Island and Zola's Lab 2 Christmas parties, where it was a combination between gingerbread and ice, as, well, we can clearly see here. One side of the world was gingerbread, while the other side of the world was literal ice. That was a very neat concept. But this idea originated for Zola's Lab 2. But I later decided to bring it to the Creations World on Legos Island because I thought the theme looked cooler in more than just one world. And honestly, I can agree that was pretty cool. It honestly looked so cool here. And it truly did look amazing. But oh boy. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. Yep, right there you can go to Gingerbread Village. And over there we can go to the Ice Town, which over like the village was all gingerbread, and I think the Legos Island segment as well, and then like where the Treehouse and Action World series were, those were all ice. So yeah, that was very, very cool. That was a very, very nice concept. Of course, the classic Christmas colors, of course, were still in here, despite the theme. With all that being said, these were mainly tricolored, and honestly, I truly still appreciate them. And yes, even the classic Zola's Lab 2 2015 Christmas Lab office design made its debut here. At least in the Creations world, that is. It was the first time we properly seen this room design in around technically 5 years, because in the original, the flower shop was never there. In the 2017 version, it was there. Regardless, it was very cool. And that wraps up the entirety of the events in 2020. After only like 20 minutes. That's insane! Regardless, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next Saturday Stories on September 2nd, where I think I don't know if we're gonna be doing 2021 in the next episode. I'll figure that out. Regardless, I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye! I was supposed to do this 2 to 3 months ago. That's actually not a joke, actually. Oh yeah, and here's the 2017 version for that room. Just to make myself a little more clear here.